Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Matters of Faith, the radio show. Matters of Faith is a show designed to bring issues of interest to you, the listening and viewing audience, that will put a biblical perspective on everyday issues. I am your host, the Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell, and it is my job to engage you in stimulating dialogue that's inspiring, encouraging, and motivating, dialogue and conversations that will help you build your determination, your commitment, and your character, conversations that will help you keep the faith. Everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. And now, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, without further ado, it is time for Matters of Faith, the radio show. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. It's Monday, October 21st. It's 8 o'clock, and it's time for Matters of Faith, the radio show. We're broadcasting live on Matters of Faith, the YouTube channel. We're also broadcasting on Matters of Faith and the J. Lauren Russell Facebook groups. Tell a phone and tell a friend they don't want to miss the show tonight. We're talking about the article and the topic, I am not a victim. I am not a victim. And our very special guest this evening is my dear friend, awesome sister of God, Reverend Dr. Kerry Jackson. Telephone, tell a friend. We're on Matters of Faith, the YouTube channel, Matters of Faith, and the J. Lauren Russell Facebook groups. I am not a victim. Please don't forget our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR Company and J. Lauren Russell Consulting, LLC, for all of your church financial consulting needs. You need a church loan. You need your trustees to be trained. You need biblical economic training. You need personal loan reduction strategies, property development, property maintenance. Remember, it's not about the castle, it's about the kingdom. Reach out to us. Email us at jlaurenr@jlr.llc. That's JLORENR@jlr.llc. Or simply give us a telephone call at 718-328-8096. That's 718-328-8096. Matters of Faith, the book. You can use our Cash App to obtain it. Just $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. That includes shipping and handling. You can send your check or money order to the JLR Company, Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. That's Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. You can also get it as an ebook by going to www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. That's www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. Check out the Eat Okra app for all black-owned restaurants all over the nation. That's right, Eat Okra. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. That's the Matters of Faith, the radio show YouTube channel. And last but not least, get your subscription to Better Mag magazine today. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50, and you can get that by going to www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. And now the article, I am not a victim. That article can be found in my column, Matters of Faith. Many of you were sent the direct link. If you did not receive that direct link, you can also find the article at the Yonkers Insider, www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. That's www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. It can also be found on my Facebook links, that is Matters of Faith, as well as the J. Lauren Russell Facebook groups, LinkedIn, X, and Band. It can also be found, the column, in Better Mag magazine, www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. The column can also be found in Pamela's Big Heart newsletter. I am not a victim. Genesis chapter 50, verses 15 to 21, New King James Version. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil we did to him. So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, before your father died, he commanded, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we are your servants. Joseph said to them, Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. I am not a victim. If there is a person who has not had something untoward, something evil happen to them, and they found themselves in a place or a space that challenged every area of faith they had, please introduce me to them. Everybody had some form of evil into their lives. Seemingly coincidental but evil things that happen, things we don't attribute to God's permissive will, are in fact his will. But they are also opportunities for him to be gracious to us. What I have come to understand is that the more evil the situation, the greater the good God has planned. Joseph is a prime example. Thrown in a ditch and sold into slavery by his brothers, accused of rape and thrown into prison, languished there for years before being released because he could interpret the Pharaoh's dream, eventually advancing to the rank of governor of an entire nation, Egypt. His brothers conceived their plot out of the evil in their hearts, but God used it for good. Not just for Joseph's good, but for the good of the nation, for the good of the people, and for the good of Joseph's family. Joseph has and was not a victim. He was a recipient of God's grace. When the vicissitudes of life envelop you, do you see yourself as a victim? Maybe you view the situation or the circumstance as some sort of divine punishment or spiritual retribution for something you might have done. The God that I serve and the God that I know is not that kind of God. Although he allows evil to enter your life, it is not to destroy you. It is allowed because the Lord puts a blessing in it. Look at Joseph. You are not a victim. You are a victor. And don't you ever forget it. Be blessed. And now my question tonight. How can you alter your perceptions so that your challenges and trials are opportunities for you to be victorious and not a victim? Let me ask it again. How can you alter your perceptions so that your challenges and trials are opportunities for you to be victorious and not a victim? Matters of Faith family, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to some and then to present to others my very special guest this evening, Reverend Dr. Carrie Jackson, who has one passion that guides her life: to support people to claim and live their fullest, most authentic selves. And guided by this passion, she uses public speaking, counseling, writing, leadership coaching, and spiritual activism to promote individual and social wholeness. Dr. Carrie is an emotional, intuitive, spiritual midwife and social healer. Using her exceptional spiritual gifts for almost 40 years, she has been able to help countless individuals harness and transform life-limiting narratives and unhealed traumas to profound embrace of peace, joyfulness, power, and unconditional love. As president of Excellent Way, Dr. Carey provides practical spirituality to transform daily lives, incorporating wisdom from diverse spiritual traditions to connect deeply with broad audiences. As an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, she has served as pastor in 3 Christian denominations, has served as adjunct seminary professor, and has been a sought-after speaker. Dr. Carey holds a PhD in Christian social ethics, Master of Divinity, Juris Doctor, and Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Sociology. She is the author of 5 books, including Love Like You've Never Been Hurt, and contributing author for Sisters in Mourning. Her current writing project is a romantic dramedy screenplay. So, Matters of Faith family, would you welcome with me tonight, for the first time in a couple of years, my dear friend, this authentic, awesome woman of God, Reverend Dr. Carrie Jackson.
I think I got all of the stuff in there that I needed to get in. Good evening and welcome to Matters of Faith, my sister. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm great.
That's good. I'm going to stop my share. You can turn your camera on so we can see you. And I'm going to
Okay.
ask you a question. I had read your bio, so they know some things about you, but they really don't know everything about you. But tell us something about you that we don't know and we really should know.
I think what is most important for people to know is that when I was 6 years old, I experienced a baptism of love. I was in church after worship service in my Pentecostal church one Sunday, and I felt love just washing over me and washing in me. And I thought that the experience I was having was what made people in my church leap and dance and speak in tongues and all that.
Mm,
I thought because it was such a profound experience. And over the years, I learned that was not what many people had experienced. But more importantly, what I learned was it was that early experience that has held my life in profound ways, in the midst of traumas, in the midst of considerable hurt and racism and sexism, on and on and on and on. Just that profound knowing
mm.
that God holds me in God's love has guided and shaped everything in my life.
So at the age of 6, you felt this love, and I like the way you used the word love because it wasn't just a feeling, but it was overwhelming love that
Yes.
just enveloped you. It's like it just wrapped itself around you, and you could not. Well, you still remember it. You're only 6 years old. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
had,
Yeah.
had to be some had to be an amazing experience.
It was. And after that, I went to my parents and I said, I want to be baptized in water. And again, this was in a Pentecostal church. So it was submersion baptism, because I said, I want to make my commitment
Mm,
to Jesus. And so my parents asked me all these questions because I was only 6. It was like, does this
right,
child
right,
really know?
right.
And they were like, oh, she really gets. And then they took me to our pastor, and he examined me as well. And so I got the green light for me to be baptized. Another profound part of that story was, unlike in the Catholic Church and in some other traditions, where all of the little kids, after they go through a class, they have their first communion together. In that church, had you were eligible to take communion only after you had been baptized, and most
Mhm.
people were baptized as adults or age of consent, usually, 13, 15, somewhere
Right,
around there.
right,
And
right.
so I went up, this little 6 years old went up to receive communion for the first time, and just this joy in my heart.
Mm,
And my father conducted the orchestra in our church. So he was, with all the musicians. My mother was in the choir. So she was in the choir
mm.
loft. And the usher turned me away, presuming I had not been baptized. My mother, witnessing me being turned away, came out of the choir loft, came to where I had returned to my seat, took me by the hand, took me to that usher, and assured the usher that I had been baptized and that I was, in fact, eligible by the requirements of that
Doctrine
church,
of the church, right?
um, that I was eligible. And and that was a profound experience. It was as profound, or it was part B
Mm,
of the part A. The part A
hmm.
was having that sensation of
Right.
that spiritual baptism. Part B was God's love is so great, nobody gets turned away.
Mm.
And that was indeed the profound message that I received from that. And that when God sees us being turned away by someone because of whatever their doctrine or their requirements or rules, etc., that God, as my mom did that day, comes in and brings us back to where God wants us to be.
There's a preacher that I met briefly just one time, but I heard him preach and I bought the sermon because it really stuck with me like glue. And he said in that sermon that we are, I'm paraphrasing now, suffering greatly from, now I quote, ecclesiastical apartheid and what's the other one? Let me see. Denominational limitations. That those things that we teach as doctrine, the traditions of men, have turned many people away from the love that you experience as a 6-year-old and pushed them as if somebody, quote unquote, actually qualifies to be in his grace. There are people who actually think that they qualify to be in God's favor. Forget the gift, that it's a gift that he gives, and there's nothing you can do to get it except to say thank you.
And there are those who believe by position, by ordination, by whatever, they are the arbiters. They are the gatekeepers, the deciders of who has God's grace and who doesn't. So it was a profound, the part A and the part B of that experience.
Now, as a 6-year-old, how did you interpret that as a 6-year-old? I know, if I look now at your credentials and all that you've done, there's a profound understanding. But as a 6-year-old, how did you process that?
Well, one of the things that I heard again and again in my Pentecostal church was that God wants to be in personal relationship with each one of us. So I heard that, and that was, seared deeply into my psyche. But they were also saying, but it has to be this one way. And so as a young child, that felt incongruous for me, because if God wants to be in personal relationship with each one of us, my little 6-year-old self understood that to mean that God would relate with us in different ways because each one of us is different, and that God honors our individuality. And so that was part of my journey as well. So as a young child, I just knew God loved me. That was the sum of it. And that I wanted to give my life in return. And so that was how I started my young journey. Now, along the way, I just want to say this.
Yes.
Along the way, as I grew and I observed some of the inconsistencies, incongruencies, the hypocrisies, etc., in the church, then I said, wait a minute, what is something wrong up in here,
Right.
And so that was really problematic for me for a few years, such that I then said, I think I'm agnostic, because why would God let people come in God's name and be mean to people, be judgmental, be, uncaring, on and on, and, completely lacking compassion. And so for a couple of years, I was agnostic from ages 12 to 14. But then when I was 14, I said, but I cannot deny the experience I've had of God. And that was really another profound piece in my spiritual journey, because then I said, oh, there's this whole free will thing. So some of us might show up in ways that are very hypocritical, but that doesn't make God any less God. And so I had to work those kinds of things out as a young person. But all of it was held in that crucible of love. And I would say that about everything in my life. I have been held by that, and the ways that I've sought to relate with people has also been from that place of love. And, when I served as pastor, there was one congregation in particular that was so challenging for me because I was the first woman to be pastor, and the church was, over 300 years old. And I was the first person of color to be pastor, so there was a lot of pushback, and actually there was hatred extended toward me. And but it was, we could slide into the victim thing if you're ready.
Yeah. Let's go.
One of the things,
good segue.
One of the things that experience really helped me learn was a deeper understanding and a deeper and a fuller embodiment of unconditional love. It was with that congregation that I learned unconditional love so much more fully. And I thought, before I got to that particular church, I thought I loved people unconditionally. I mean, after all, I was a little 6-year-old kid who was baptized in God's love, And but I learned a whole lot more about that, and it was a profound experience. And so, not a victim. While I was serving in that congregation, I began feeling physically tired, and it was really my body's response to the evil, and it really was a spirit of evil, and I'll unpack that in a little bit, but so much that was being projected to me. And I went to a friend who is a medical intuitive. She's this powerful Native woman, indigenous sister, who just, the way she connects with spirit is just so amazing. And so she looked at me and looked from a spiritual lens.
Right.
And she saw my heart, and she said, and she didn't know what was going on. She said, "You're protecting your heart." And she said, "Because you've put this wall of protection around your heart is shriveling and drying up." And then she went on to say, "But your heart chakra is your primary point of power. So you need to lower those walls, take them down, because if you're barricaded, you are not able to give love." And she said, "That's your power." And I really and so I'm sobbing as she's saying all of this to me. And it made abundant sense. Then I explained to her what I was experiencing and why I had barricaded my heart. I was afraid of receiving all of the arrows that kept being hurled my way. And I, for this conversation, what is so important for me today is the letter that Paul wrote to his protege, Timothy, in 2 Timothy, in the 1st chapter. "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind." And so you ask the question to the audience, how do you change your perception so that rather than seeing yourself as a victim, you can really be able to access the power that God makes available to all of us. And so after I had my experience with this amazing sister, Valerie, I realized I had been allowing myself to be overtaken by a spirit of fear, which was making it like static on the line. So I wasn't connecting with the truth that God has given me power, love, and a sound mind. And so after I had that wonderful session with Valerie, it was just such a powerful healing session. As Patti LaBelle song from, it was back in the 80s, I got a new attitude. I shifted my attitude from this notion of these people are against me, these people are against me, these people, and the other people who are not against me, they don't want to allow themselves to know that their fellow congregants are racist and misogynist. They don't want to know that. So they have left my butt out in the wind, so to speak, all by myself, unprotected. And so I felt like a victim in so many ways. And having that important session with Valerie reminded me I'm not a victim. But I've been given power, love, and how I really tap into the power and love is by my mind. And so I had to change, get that new attitude. And then instead of operating in that self-protective mode, I said, I'm going to love them anyway. It is my love toward them and my love for them is not contingent upon whether they give it back to me or not. It was that kind of power, that kind of love, and that kind of sound mind. And there was such freedom that came to me as I got that new attitude, as I reconnected with the truth that that spirit of fear that was on me had not come from God. Now, did that change the circumstances? No. And that's the important thing when we talk about I'm not a victim. It doesn't necessarily mean our circumstances are going to change. But the way in which we relate with the circumstances, that's what shifts us from being victim to being a victor. And that's what happened for me. The liberation, the freedom that came, I couldn't have gotten there if I still had my heart walled up, barricaded, in that self-protective mode. But I got free, and I grew up with a song in church, free, free, gloriously free. I don't know if you know that one. That goes way, that's one of those old ones, goes way, way, way back. But that shifted things for me tremendously.
Wow. As you were talking, I tell the story many times. I do this. I don't know if I've ever said it on Matters of Faith, but when I've talked about liberation, freeing yourself, I use this analogy that the Lord gave me. I said, and you are probably the embodiment of this story, this little analogy. I said, have you ever thought as a child, this is what I want to be when I grow up. This is who I want to be. And you begin to grow in that, right? And then all of a sudden, you start getting all these adversarial people coming your way and telling you what you can't do. And they begin to attack you. And so what you do is you begin to develop your adulthood, not the child. The child was clear. The child was real clear. But you start putting up barriers to protect the child, like barriers. So you literally fence them in. You put a wall around the child, and the child can't get out because you put up a wall. The wall says, I'm trying to protect you because you don't know what's good for you. I know what's good for you. I'm grown now. But the child is saying, yeah, but I want to love people. Why you keep doing this?
Love.
And you say, listen, be quiet, because if you keep talking, people will know. I don't want them to know how vulnerable you are. And this is
Right.
happening internally within yourself. And so eventually what happens is that every now and then the child peeks their head out and shows that they want to be loved, right? And you keep pushing them back inside, say, get back in there because it's dangerous out here. And then one
Not
day
safe. It's
the
not
child
safe.
comes out and does not go back in. I don't care what you say, because I'm going to do this. And then you find out the children are very resilient. They can take a lot. And all of a sudden, this child begins to reshape your life. You said exactly that, because you said that, I built a barrier around my child. The child was encased in this wall. And as Valerie said, you were trying to protect your heart. I call it your child. You were trying to protect the child. And then when she showed it to you, what happened is that the adult became embarrassed and said, you know what? I'm going to let her out. And when you let her out, the circumstances don't change. But the way you see them completely transforms you, and no weapon formed against you. Then all those scriptures become real, right? No weapon formed against you shall prosper. It doesn't matter what they throw. It doesn't matter what they hit you with. It doesn't matter, because I'm going to be the child that loves, because that's who I am.
That's who I am. Yeah.
And so last week I was talking, and by the way, my guest last week is a friend of yours. You didn't know that. I'm going to tell you who she is in a minute. But it was very interesting, because we were talking about being who you are. Being, not doing. Forget the doing. It's being.
Right.
Once you get to the point that you're being who God created you to be, all of those situations and circumstances literally begin to fall away, like the armor of Homer's ancient, his ancient war god, because there's nothing for it to cling to. Nothing. You're free. And you said that. I'm sitting there saying, she's literally telling me what the Lord has given me to say. Many, I'm about 30 years ago. I've been talking about this story for 30 years.
I love it. I love it.
I love it too, because now I know that it's real, and it has a real space to it. It's not just something we talk about virtually. It's real. The real thing is that you have to be who God created you to be. And sometimes you get that revelation early in life. Some get it later, but when you get it, be true to that vision, be true to that calling, because that's your life. That's who
and as you were saying, as we grow up, there are often people who, either because they call themselves wanting to protect us, or they recognize that who our authentic self is brighter than what they believe their authentic self is. Because it may or may not be the case, but if that's what they believe, and for some, they try to steer you differently because of their own jealousy. So either out of wanting to protect you, or because of their jealous, some will try to get you to think of yourself as smaller and less powerful than what we really are. So who was my friend who was here?
Denise Turner. She went to school with you.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
When I mentioned at the end of the show, I said, the next week my guest will be, she's like, what? So
I don't know when I've heard her name.
Well, she heard yours and she recognized it right away. And then I showed her your picture. She said, that's her. That's her. Because you're from Baltimore, right?
Baltimore, yes.
So that's how she knew you. She said she's from Baltimore. We were in
and she and I connected on via Facebook probably before I moved out of New York. So, and I've been in Arizona, I think I've been here 8 years. So she and I had connected then, and we hadn't been in touch. This year, we graduated from high school 50 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
Which cracks me up, because I was like, when did I get to, I'm going to be 68 in a couple of weeks. I'm like, when did that happen?
I know. I'm right behind you, sis. I'm right with you, babe, right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to tell it to you now, but I will make sure that you get her telephone number.
Oh, please. I would love
because
that. I would love
she was. I said, no, I'm gonna wait because I want to surprise you.
that.
So I now I'm gonna put it. She said she's gonna be on, so she might be on tonight. She might
Well,
be on,
Denise, if you are, hi.
and she is in Las Vegas.
Oh, what? Okay, so we're not that far from each
No,
other.
not far at all. So yeah, it's such a much. It's when I say it's a small world, it's a really small. And the bigger you get, the smaller it becomes.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
indeed,
but
indeed.
I am absolutely blown away by this 6-year-old story, because it is the story that I tell all the time. So now I can put a name to it. So
Yeah, yeah.
I can let you personify my story.
You know, when you let me know what today's topic is, I was so excited because as I think about all that's happening in this election season
Hmm. Hmm.
and all of the polarization and some things that many of us never could have imagined would be part of this
Right,
election.
right.
Um, this this is a moment that is so important for all of us to know that we are not victims. So similar to what happened to me when I was serving that particular congregation,
Yes.
where I started to lose touch with the reality
Hmm.
of the power and love and sound mind that God had given me. I started to, it started fraying. My connection started fraying. And I know that is happening for so many people in this time regarding this election cycle that we're in. The anxiety is high, the fear is high, the dread.
Mm.
There's a degree of uh, post-traumatic stress that many of us experience because we have the body memory of January 6th and on and on and on and on. And how critical it is for us to remember that we are not victims
Right.
because we pray differently when we have the perception of ourselves as victims. How we relate with everything that's happening out here in this election cycle is very different from when we relate with it from a place of power and love and sound mind. And I just want to share this, something that's been on my heart the last week or two. Do you remember the Stockholm Syndrome
Yes, I do.
and the story where that term came from 1972 or 73, a little
Hmm.
before I graduated from high school?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and for 6 days, these bank robbers held the bank employees and others held them hostage. And at the end of that time, they discovered that some of the people
Began
who
to,
had
right,
been held hostage
right,
had formed this bond
right.
with their captors and wanted the captors not to be prosecuted. Some even raised money for the bank robbers' legal defense
Right.
and all of that. So folk were like, what the heck is this all about? I believe there are some in this country, millions in this country, who have been victimized in so many ways for so long in their lives, have been abused, have been held captive by the circumstances of their lives, that there is, when certain people come along and say, I'm your protector, I'm your
Mhm.
savior, I'm going to fix it, you know, or comes along and say, look at the horrible things they're doing to me, which is also some of the message.
Right,
There
right.
is this bonding. It's a trauma bonding. There's a sense of helplessness that many have, and uh, for years, psychologists have been trying to discern. So, what is it that makes some people come out of abusive experiences, having this bond with their abuser, and other people come out of the same experiences and don't have that kind of bond. And psychologists have said two theories they have promoted. One is it's a coping mechanism that's learned and passed down in our DNA from ancestors.
Mm.
And another theory is that people who are very compassionate, but compassionate who don't necessarily have healthy boundaries with their compassion, they start extending so much compassion toward the abuser anytime the abuser has shown them any modicum of kindness.
Mm.
And so I've really been reflecting on that as I've watched some of the, latest news and the like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and observing folks. And I've been praying a lot the last few years about people who have been susceptible to cults. Cults have been growing in this country, which I also believe has to do with these with this notion of being a victim, and how do I transform from being victim? What many people do is, as the old expression, hook their wagon to someone who seems like they're powerful.
Right.
But that's not the same thing as acknowledging for yourself, I'm not a victim, I am a victor.
Right.
And many people still out of their sense of victimhood will connect with the abuser, the captor, with the cult leader, with a sense of, here's how I won't be a victim. But that's not what God is inviting us to. Not hitch your wagon to somebody else, but to recognize from your inmost heart that you're not a victim, but you're a victor, and that God has given you the spirit of love, power, and sound mind. And so I've really been reflecting on that a lot. And so I have been praying for the millions of people in this country who have, from my perception, have hitched their wagon to someone who they think will be their protector, their victor.
Right.
But we know that's not the case.
Right. Right. You said a number of things that are extremely, extremely profound. I remember Patty Hearst too. Remember Patty Hearst?
Yes. Oh, indeed.
Patty Hearst, right around the same time, was, the heiress of the Hearst fortune and was kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
And she was kidnapped by, I think it was the Liberation Army or something like that.
Yes.
And she became a part of the Liberation Army. And she actually went out and did bank robberies with them in order to support them in their efforts. So she not only exhibited a sort of like she wasn't connected with them just sort of like mentally, but she got totally into it. And then when they finally rescued her, she fought vigilantly to stay where she was.
Yes.
And then she had to be deprogrammed because she had completely been inoculated, if you will, in that mindset of quote unquote liberation for this group of people. And so yes. And you, now that you mention it, I don't think any of the psychology that's being used is by accident. I know that, there is an awareness that people are prone to be led by those very things that you mentioned, by someone identifying with that, like him saying, I've heard the expression, well, people in jail identify with me. Okay. And he's right. People who are, struggling to get by, they said, yeah, So he's going to do something that I can't do.
Yes, yes.
They're going to do something that's impossible for me to get to. Why? Because they know what I've been through. At least they said that.
Yes, yes.
But actually, they don't have a clue. But
No.
they said it because they know that it will impress you and you'll side with that. So emotions has no logic. So when they tap into your emotions, it's easy to lead you because you're emotionally attached. I fell in love with a mass murderer, you know, that kind of thing.
Right, right.
And I love him. I know he's doing well. It doesn't matter because, you know, I love him. So love has no logic. And so I don't think it's by accident at all. I think it's completely purposeful.
And, you know, I think as well about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'm not remembering in this moment what each of those tiers, but what I do recall is that the bottom tier is about the physiological needs. So do you have food, clothing, and shelter?
Right.
And so it's not happenstance that there are some who want to keep people who are poor, want to keep them poor.
Right. Right.
Because people, when they're scrambling for the physiological needs, then they can't even get to some of those higher tiers.
Right.
Can't get anywhere near self-actualization.
Absolutely.
And all of that.
And that's what we're really talking about when you say, and you said it right, when you talk about not hitching your wagon to someone else's a horse, but identifying your own inner being. That's self-actualization, coming to a point where I can think for myself. I can decide for myself what's right for me, not what's right for you that you say you're going to use to help me. That takes a lot of growth and development.
And, you know, I look at so much of every society in a very intersectional way. And so it is not happenstance that in public education, there's been this push away from young people thinking critically. They've got to perform to tests.
Right, right, right.
And that squeezes out the space for them to think critically. And it is not happenstance that people of certain religious traditions, and especially of certain Christian traditions, where there's this notion of you've got to have the minister tell you what you need to do and what you need to think. And I grew up in that very much. And in a lot of ways, I was chastised as a young person because I did think very independently, and but I kept going back to, but God wants to be in a personal relationship with me.
Right.
and so God didn't ask me to check my intellect at the door, but because it's all of me, I bring all of me, and so it for some of us, because of how we've been socialized, that it's not okay for us to question, not okay for us to think critically. It makes us more susceptible to a cult-like leader who is the protector, the fixer. I only can, and there was I don't know if you've read the book, and I haven't read the book in honesty, but I've talked with so many people who have. But Jesus and John Wayne, have you read that?
No,
book?
I have not. No, I have not. Let me write that down.
So that book came out, I guess, 10-ish, maybe 12 years ago.
Okay.
I'm not remembering the author, but the premise of the book is there are some who didn't prefer this Jesus who was extending the tent to everybody. They wanted Jesus who's going to come in like John Wayne, ride in on the horse, and kill the enemies, and I'm sheriff in town, that kind of thing. And there's been in some spaces within Christian church, this merger of this loving Jesus and this John Wayne figure who comes in and cleans the town up. And so there's some of that that's showing up in the one who's running for president again, because he came in very much with that kind of John Wayne swagger. I'm gonna clean stuff up, and I'm the new sheriff.
I'm gonna clean the swamp, right? Drain the swamp.
And, I'm gonna clean the swamp. When we do not pause long enough to say, in whom am I putting my trust? Am I putting my trust in an intermediary, or am I putting my trust directly in my Creator? Because there is a difference. Intermediaries in their humanity can come with a whole lot of agendas and can come and lead us in places that our Creator had not planned for us. And so again, me as this little child, I got that really early on. The preacher was saying what the preacher was saying, but I really got this. Oh, God really wants to be in a personal relationship. You mean I can talk directly with God? I can tell God all of my troubles. I can tell God when I'm pissed at God because I don't like the way things have gone, but we have that quality of relationship that is so love-based, so intimate that that's the one to whom I go, not an intimate. And I just want to say this. I had this profound experience when I was 19 years old in college, and I was reading one of the writings of Søren Kierkegaard, who 18th century Danish philosopher and theologian. And Kierkegaard asks the question in this book, why do you serve God? And his second question, do you serve God to avoid going to hell? Good Pentecostal girl. Yeah, that's why I serve God. Lauren, something grabbed my heart. And I said, God, why do you want me to serve you? See, the serving God so I don't go to hell is a victim orientation.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And so I prayed. I kept presenting this question to God several times a day. I mean, I was just praying and meditating on this. And I came out, it was 3 days I did this prayer and meditation. And I fasted because I really wanted to know, God, why do you want me to serve you? And I came out of that experience. I said, God, I'm only 19. I don't know if there's a hell or not, but I don't choose for that to be the reason I serve you.
Right.
I want to serve you because you love me and I love you. So here's that love thing again. There is no victim when I really am making a choice for love. I'm using my agency for love. I'm not only responding to God's love, but I'm choosing to love God. And that was another one of those points in my life that has really guided me in some really profound ways. And it is so important to me that I encourage people, whatever service you give,
right,
it's not because you're trying to avoid punishment, but because you want to embrace the beauty of the love, the power, and the sound mind that God has freely, liberally given and continues to make available to us.
That's a profound question. You know, why do you serve God? And that's interesting because the victims, and you said it so well, the victim's perspective is so that I don't go to hell. But a victorious position is that I serve God because I love him and he loves me. So there's a mutual agreement. I'm going to be in service to you, not because that you're going to keep me from something, but you're going to bring me to something. You're going to bring me into relationship, which is what I want in the first place. I want the relationship. And I think we miss that sometimes because, you know, especially coming from, I don't know about you, but from where I come from, right? Most people felt victimized. I was talking to a young lady at church yesterday, and she told me that, you know, she was victimized by a police officer at the age of 15. And how that has shaped her life. It's been 11 years ago, but how it has shaped her life and how that memory is embedded in her mind. And so what she said was that I do not trust police and I do not trust that particular precinct. And I said to her, I said, you know, I really appreciate that because that was traumatic and it should have never happened. However, I'm the president of the precinct council at that precinct.
At that very
I want you to be, I want you to become a part of that because your experience can stop it from happening from others. Your experience. Because not everyone, but you understand it. And because the pain, even though it was a decade ago, has not faded in the smallest. It's still completely and totally. And so I always say that you use those things because I argued in my article that God uses those things because he puts a blessing in there. That your literally your blessing is in that pain.
Yes. And not only your blessing, but the blessing for lots of other people.
Lots of other people. Family, friends, colleagues, and so anybody, everybody.
Stranger.
Exactly.
From age 4 to age 24, over a 20-year period, I was sexually assaulted by several different people. And, you know, talk about the muscle memory. And so a lot of the, and not only muscle memory, but my thinking was so much about, they're going to hurt me. Because it kept happening. And because for me, in that 20-year period, there were 10 different people.
Wow.
Different contexts. I'm just minding my little, you know, 4-year-old business, my 14, you know.
Right.
And so it really was seared into my own perception about life. They're going to hurt me.
Right.
And I didn't know the extent to which that was seared in my thinking until when I was 29 years old, my father died. The significance of that was my dad always said, I'll be your protector until you get married. He said that again. I was the only girl, you know, 3 boys, you know, and so that was his understanding of his role in my life. And I thought I was just hearing him say those words. I really didn't know the extent to which I had really taken those words in. When my dad died, I started that notion that I was going to be hurt because it was already there. It intensified, Lauren. And what I started doing was gaining a lot of weight. Because it was what I call my protective fact.
Right.
Because I didn't feel safe in the world. And so what I was saying earlier about really examining in whom do we put our sense of safety is so important. I didn't realize the extent to which I had put it in my father, and now he was no longer physically there.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while first to figure out why I was gaining weight, because I really didn't know. And in 10 years, I gained 100 pounds.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, it's because I was moving, because of that time of my life, I was moving through a few different
Mm-hmm,
states
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and different jobs and, all that kind of thing. And so I thought it had to do with that. And then it took me those 10 years really to, oh, this has to do with, I don't feel safe in the world.
Mm.
And this moment that we're living in as a nation, and whatever people may have going on in their families, on their jobs, in their faith communities, et cetera, to keep asking that question, where am I anchoring my sense of safety and security? If I anchor it only within myself, there will be times that I will disappoint myself, and then I'll, be, you know, feel I'm not living up to what I need to do. And then I can go into self-judgment and, all
Right,
of that.
right,
If
right,
I
right,
put it
right,
in somebody else, they will let me down, so all
right,
of it.
right,
And
right.
so it took me those years really to come back to what that little 6-year-old girl knew.
See, she was right on point. So on that point, let's do this. We're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to go back on and recognize the sponsors and advertisers and things like that. Read the
Okay.
article again, and then during the second half of our broadcast tonight, we're going to look at the responses that people have placed in the chat, and then we're going to see if we can bring some of those comments into our conversation. All
I
right.
look forward to that.
So you can.
Okay.
So you go. I'm gonna do this. I'm going, as they say, go ghost for a moment. And you do likewise, and we're going to just go right back, and we'll be back in just a few minutes, everybody.
Please don't forget our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR Company and J. Lauren Russell Consulting, LLC, for all of your church financial consulting needs. You need a church loan, you need your trustees to be trained, you need biblical economic training, you need personal loan reduction strategies, property development, property maintenance. Remember, it's not about the castle, it's about the kingdom. Reach out to us. Email us at jlaurenr@jlr.llc. That's JLORENR@jlr.llc. Or simply give us a telephone call at 718-328-8096. That's 718-328-8096. Matters of Faith, the book. You can use our Cash App to obtain it. Just $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. That includes shipping and handling. You can send your check or money order to the JLR Company, Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. That's Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. You can also get it as an ebook by going to www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. That's www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. Check out the Eat Okra app for all black-owned restaurants all over the nation. That's right, Eat Okra. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. That's the Matters of Faith, the radio show YouTube channel. And last but not least, get your subscription to Better Mag magazine today. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50, and you can get that by going to www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. And And now the article. I am not a victim. That article can be found in my column, Matters of Faith. Many of you were sent the direct link. If you did not receive that direct link, you can also find the article at the Yonkers Insider, www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. That's www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. matters.blogspot.com. It can also be found on my Facebook links, that is Matters of Faith, as well as the J. Lauren Russell Facebook groups, LinkedIn, X, and Band. It can also be found, the column, in Better Mag magazine, www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. The column can also be found in Pamela's Big Heart newsletter. I am not a victim. Genesis chapter 50, verses 15 to 21, New King James Version. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil we did to him." So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, "Before your father died, he commanded, saying, 'Thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father.' And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, 'Behold, we are your servants.' Joseph said to them, 'Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones.' And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. I am not a victim. If there is a person who has not had something untoward, something evil happen to them, and they found themselves in a place or a space that challenged every area of faith they had, please introduce me to them. Everybody had some form of evil into their lives. Seemingly coincidental but evil things that happen, things we don't attribute to God's permissive will, are in fact his will. But they are also opportunities for him to be gracious to us. What I have come to understand is that the more evil the situation, the greater the good God has planned. Joseph is a prime example. Thrown in a ditch and sold into slavery by his brothers, accused of rape and thrown into prison, languished there for years before being released because he could interpret the Pharaoh's dream, eventually advancing to the rank of governor of an entire nation, Egypt. His brothers conceived their plot out of the evil in their hearts, but God used it for good. Not just for Joseph's good, but for the good of the nation, for the good of the people, and for the good of Joseph's family. Joseph has and was not a victim. He was a recipient of God's grace. When the vicissitudes of life envelop you, do you see yourself as a victim? Maybe you view the situation or the circumstance as some sort of divine punishment or spiritual retribution for something you might have done. The God that I serve and the God that I know is not that kind of God. Although he allows evil to enter your life, it is not to destroy you. It is allowed because the Lord puts a blessing in it. Look at Joseph. You are not a victim. You are a victor. And don't you ever forget it. Be blessed. And now my question for the last time this evening. How can you alter your perception so that your challenges and trials are opportunities for you to be victorious and not a victim? One more time. How can you alter your perceptions so that your challenges and trials are opportunities for you to be victorious and not a victim? Now, you've met my guest. You've heard her speak. You know all the things that she said about her is true. But now it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce you to something that you didn't know about her, which she already told us, but I'm going to tell you something that you didn't know. She believed she could do it, and she did. Well, you've already met my guest tonight. Family, would you know you agree that?
So watch this. I'm going to go back for a second because I want to do something. I want to do something different. So watch this. Here we go.
Well, you've already met my guest tonight, and I know you agree that she's an amazing woman, but she's got a lot more to contribute.
So watch this. I'm still not finished. I got another thing for you. I'm playing with this because I want you to hear something that you haven't heard before. So give me half a second because I got two things here and one of them I got to get rid of. So give me a second and I'm going to do something unique because there's two things here. Let's see. Okay. Let's see if we can do this here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something. I'm going to take it out just for a moment. I'm going to stop my share. Stop my share. I'm still not on camera, but I'm stopping my share just for a moment. And then I'm going to bring it back on in a minute later because I need to fix something that I did that was wrong. I need to fix it real quick. You can't see it. I'm not going to show it to you, but I am going to fix it. And then I am going to have it work right for you.
Well, you've already.
Okay, so that's not the one. I'm gonna get rid of this one. Done. Okay, now give me a half a second. And what I'm going to do is this is what happens when something happens that you hadn't planned on. I hadn't planned on this. So now I'm just making it right. So we're going to do this. I'm going to show you my how I'm going to do this. You'll see it in a minute. I got to drop all the way down, y'all. So y'all bear with me because I got to come all the way back down to her screen. And where am I? Not there, not there, not there, not there, not there, not there, not there. This is where I am, right there. So now I'm going to share my screen again. I want to make sure that you get this right because this is too important for me to mess up. I can't mess this up.
Now, you've met my guest. You've heard her speak. You know all the things that she said about her is true.
And so what I'm going to do is just go back again. That's not the one I want. So let me tell you something about her. All of the things that you heard about her, all the things that you saw, but this is who she really is. I want you to see this. I want you to look at this picture. I want these pictures. You see her as a preacher. You see her as an educator. You see her as a provider. And not only that, but a comforter. You see her as a counselor. And you also see her jumping out of an airplane. So my guest tonight, I'm going to bring back so you can enjoy the rest of the second half of this show. My guest, my friend, my colleague, Reverend Dr. Kerry Jackson. So come on back, sis. I got you now. Took me a little while to get around the corner, but I got there. So
no worries. No worries.
So listen, so we're back, right? I wanted to look at some of the things that have been said so far in our conversation to make sure that we are on the same point. So my question is, how can you alter your perceptions so that your challenges and trials are opportunities for you to be victorious and not a victim? And that's what we've been talking about tonight. And Darryl says, the anger, frustration from the failure of our expectations, the sense that the devil makes when he says to us, you know this ain't right, right? So attuned to these things that victims fits. So let me see if I can say that again. I want to make sure I get it right. The anger, the frustration from the failure of our expectations, the sense that the devil makes when he says to us, you know this ain't right, right? So attuned to these things that victim fits. Does that make sense to you?
I think so.
Okay, so you want to respond to that?
So, I spoke a little while ago about the agency that we have. And that's God giving us the spirit of power, love, and sound mind.
Right.
So often when we know that the path we're thinking about is not the ideal one for us, and we'll hear that voice saying, you know, that ain't right, and you still do it. And then you really go into a whole lot of self-judgment and self-judgment, the thing about it is it takes us away from our connection with the power that God gives us.
Right.
Self-judgment takes us more into a fear response. And so expectations, that was the first part. Sometimes we have such high expectations of ourselves, and when we don't meet them, instead of trying to discern, so even I knew this wasn't the right course for me. What was going on in me that led me that direction? So that is a healthier way of being able to then the next time be able to make better decisions for ourselves. Because again, self-judgment takes us to fear, and it's this downward spiral. And we keep going and see, I never get this right. And, I am I'm a mess it up again. And, and why would God love me? I'm just not, and so again,
I don't deserve any of this. I don't deserve it.
Yeah, I don't deserve any of God's grace or, whatever. And so being able to pause for a minute and say, so what was going on that directed me this particular way? There's a narrative I have in mind. And, earlier before the break, I talked about, I had this narrative, they're going to hurt me.
Right.
So I knew that some of the choices I was making, and it was potato chips and cookies for me. I don't eat a lot of, food. It was just all junk, right? And so I knew that was not healthy for me. And then I would go into this, oh gosh, I'm just not getting this right. And what's wrong with me? And, so a lot of self-flagellation was happening, which would have me then feel stressed, fearful, anxious, which would lead me into the same pattern of behaviors and choice making that was totally opposite of where I was trying to go.
Can I share
something? For me, it wasn't until I said, so what's going on?
Right.
What's the narrative I'm operating with? Where did that narrative come from? And is that narrative the truth God has about me? And so that was really important. That's when, for me, some change started.
When you began to do that, then the narrative began to change. Your behavior began to follow the narrative because you changed it. Right.
Yes.
And then what about was there any outside influences that also contributed to that? People's comments or whatever they may have said?
So, because, narratives don't just change like that.
Exactly.
So in the process of changing the narrative, and I would lose weight, when people started complimenting me on the smaller size, the fear would start overtaking me and I would gain weight back.
Interesting.
Because the narrative, I was working on it, but it wasn't it wasn't fully gone. And so one of the things that's really important is we have to recognize we never have these vacuums in our thinking.
Right.
We've got to start filling it with a new narrative. And the time to meditate on that is really critical. That was something I learned because I had been meditating on a narrative that I had, even when I had not given language to it. I didn't have conscious language to the narrative that had been operating for me during those years that I had gained the 100 pounds. And I'm just citing that as an example. It can be anything in our lives. And so we're not going to have an empty, we're never narrative-less.
Right.
So we have these unconscious narratives, and often people don't even know what their narratives are. And that's one of the things I help a lot of people identify what their narratives are, because they keep saying, Dr. Carey, I'm trying to get over here, and I keep going over here. What's going on? Whether it's an individual or a couple. And so really working with folks to help them identify what their narratives are. And we determine them by seeing what the pattern of our choice making is. And what are the circumstances, the people, the places where we're more likely to make certain choices. And in looking at those patterns, that helps people begin to understand and identify what their narrative is. And so what do you want your life to look like? What kind of narrative do you need to construct to help you have your life look like that. And so, back to the scripture for this evening, what was meant for evil, God is using it for good. That's a narrative.
It's a narrative. That's right. That's right.
And I remember I used to say, God, I know you are, this situation I'm going through is not only working some good in my life. I know. No, I would say, God, this is so hard. You better bless a whole bunch of people. And so gradually I started.
Don't just leave it at me. Keep it.
No, because this is so doggone hard. This has to be a blessing for a whole lot of people. And that's one of the things that then helped me develop a program that I call Taking Back My Life, which is specifically for survivors of sexual trauma. And so much of it came from me looking at and identifying my narratives and rewriting them. And so I then started developing tools and resources to help other people be able to do that in their lives, whether it's sexual trauma or whatever it might be. That's really important to me. And much of that has come from my firm belief in the Lord's Prayer and that the daily bread, each of us is given some bread, and that bread that I might be given is not just for Carrie. It's for Carrie to share with whoever God brings her to a state that she might be able to share it with. I believe that so firmly. I really do. And so I apply that to everything in my life.
Let me ask you this, Carrie. So let's say sexual trauma or any other trauma, any other thing that you're experiencing or have experienced.
Yeah.
How is it that we tend to have a tendency to suppress it and not allow it to surface because it's so painful? We don't do that many times, and so it sort of sits there like a dormant volcano, just waiting for an opening to.
Well, it's a narrative. If I don't talk about it, it won't impact me. And that's not truth, because it operates in this very subterranean way and guides us and directs us. And often the unconscious choice making that happens in our lives is because of that subterranean thing that we're not addressing. So it's still directing, it's still running the show, even if we don't talk about it. And actually, it'll run the show even more if we don't talk about it.
Yeah, so it can affect our relationships with others. It can impact the way we work. It can impact how we show up in so many different areas of our lives. And then because we're not addressing it, it's kind of, you don't even know what it is because you're not really addressing it. And it just keeps manifesting. And so your relationships tend to end the same way as all the other ones. Lose jobs the same way you did the last one. All of the things, and you can't figure out what it is.
And when I was growing up, there was this community narrative in my church that if you really had a right relationship with God, nothing that happened in your life would knock you off kilter. That you wouldn't have a problem. If you have a problem, it's because you don't have enough faith. And so really looking at what's the narrative of the spiritual community that I'm part of, because yes, we are spiritual beings having this earthly experience. All of that is true. But the emotions that we have, God gave them to us.
Yes.
And we can learn from them if we acknowledge what they are. We can't learn from them if we don't acknowledge and don't identify what our emotions might be saying. And then they're running the show. And And so one of the reasons I have been very out, if you will, about the sexual assault that I've experienced in my life and a whole bunch of things I've had in my life. I'm very transparent about those things because it's important to me to help people know they're not alone. Because often folks think, well, I'm the only one going through this experience.
Yeah.
And I believe Bishop T.D. Jakes, much of his ministry has been so influential, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, because in his ministry, he created space for folks to talk about the emotional traumas and the harms, you know, and so I think the more space we give folks to know that it's okay, whatever they've experienced, that it doesn't have to define them. It's part of their life experience, doesn't define them. One of the things that I had this profound God moment many years ago. I had gone for a church conference and I thought I was going to be in all the worship services and whatnot. I was in my hotel room most of the time because God needed me away from my regular routine to talk with me in some ways that I really needed to hear. And in this encounter with God, and when I say I was down on my face, sobbing and it started with God showing me some things I had done that had hurt people. And because folks for years had said, oh, Carrie, you're walking, talking love, you know, and because that is so much of who I am, and that's true, I had led myself to believe that's the only way I had been showing up. I couldn't conceive that I had done anything that hurt somebody. And God showed me some stuff. So when I first saw it, I went to this place of hubris at first. God, that's not me.
Right.
Then when I allowed myself to accept what God was showing me, then I went to humiliation. And God kept talking to me and said, baby girl, and that's my baby girl, no, you ain't getting it. I'm not trying to have you feel humiliated.
Right.
And then I transitioned to humility, which was absolutely, was it, oh goodness, I've done this and I've hurt this person and I've left this undone and da 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 da. And I'm still so loved by God and all of these people in my life and da da da. And so I had all this humility. So that was movement 3, if you will. When I thought I was done, I said, come on, baby girl, we're still in conversation. And then I got to this 4th phase in this, and that was humanity. I never knew before that experience with God that God celebrates my humanity, which includes my emotions, which includes I did this wonderfully and I messed this up and hurt this person and all of my humanity. And for me to be able to give my humanity, all of who I am, in that relationship with God that we've been talking about, bring my whole self. And, you know, I'd been singing this song forever, just as I am, but I didn't get it because I was taught there's no good thing in the flesh. That's what I was taught in my Pentecostal church. And so I had believed that. And so I had cut off a part of me from myself.
Because it was flesh and there was no good thing in flesh.
When I had that absolutely rich time with God, and I say God took me on retreat. I thought I was going to a church conference. I went on retreat with the Spirit.
Right.
And when I fully understood, oh, God's not loving me in my humanity despite my humanity. God created me
Right.
as human.
Mm.
It blew my mind, Lauren. And that helped me do some more look at, so what are some of the narratives that I have been holding in my life, and looking at how some of those narratives had caused me or had directed me to hurt people at times that I had, so again, not going into the judgment, because that's that humiliation stuff.
Right.
I can't learn from a place of humiliation.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't become what I long to be, what I aspire to be, if I'm judging myself, nor can I fully become what I aspire to be if I tell myself I've already achieved it.
So you have to be humble, yet you have to be honest, and
Honest.
you have to be willing to acknowledge, this is who I am.
This is who I am.
This is me. And with all of my quirks, with all of my problems, with all of my deficiencies, I'm more than enough, because he made me like this.
Yeah.
And he knew it. So it's not like he's not disappointed in me because I've done these things. But he says, you can do better. My dad used to tell me something all the time. My dad died when I was 20 years old. So I don't have the experience of him as an adult, if you will. But he used to say things like this. He would say, you just need to, just be who you're supposed to be. You learn from those mistakes. You learn from those things. It's not the worst thing that could happen to you. The worst thing is if you don't learn from them.
If you don't learn. Amen.
That's the worst thing.
Amen.
And my dad was an amazing person, because just to give you a little, and then I'm gonna go back to something that you said, and give you some background in terms of what ran through my mind. But my dad was an amazing person, because when my mom died, when we were kids, 14 years old, my mom died, I was 14.
Wow.
And my sister, I remember her, she's the only girl, like you. Four children, 3 boys, and she's the baby.
Oh, goodness.
She said, asked my father, we were all sitting on the bed. My mom had died. She was taken to the hospital and she didn't come back. Right. She just like dropped dead.
Wow.
And my sister said, what's going to happen to us?
Yeah.
And my dad said, without hesitation, we're a family. We're going to stick together. And I remember feeling this sense of like love, right? Oh my God, he's going to take care of us. He's my protector. He's my provider. He's my dad. I remember that. I remember feeling safe and in a very vulnerable time. And so my dad was a special guy. And in his specialties, and he passed away as a young man. He's only 49 years old. So at my age now, I know he was a kid. It's like, how you were 49 years old? I didn't know half of the stuff that I know now when I was 49 years old.
49.
Yeah. But it was interesting because he set the tone. He said, we do some things that don't always work out the way we think, but we still do them. And we do them, you don't do them. My brother was incarcerated. My brother got arrested. And my dad bailed him out. I told him not to do it. So don't bail him out, because he's an idiot. I remember saying that about my brother. So he doesn't do the right thing. He said, yeah, but that's my son. That's my son. I can't have him in jail like that. So he went and scraped up the money and bailed him out. My brother jumped bail. I was like, I wanted to kill him, right? But my father said, things happen. He forgave my brother to the extent that I had no choice.
Wow.
But I watched him do things that were absolutely amazing, because what he did was show me that being a victim is up to you. It's up to you. You have to decide who you're going to be. You could be a victim in a minute, right? My mom, the love of his life dropped dead. And he's got 4 kids. And, a lot of men just Took a little
Mm-hmm.
while.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
He stayed there until he died.
Mm.
So he kept his word. So when I think about him, I think about that, keeping your word. And then you talked about space, for people to express themselves. I did a
Mm-hmm.
show a number of years ago on WWRL. You remember that station? New
Yes.
York City. I had an opportunity to do a show on there that I created myself. I called it OPP. OPP. Other People's Problems. And it was a call-in talk show, a lot like what we have here. And I'd have a guest on, and we would talk about problems that they've overcome in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And what you talked about was people thinking that they're the only ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was amazing because my engineer had people in the studio that he engineered for, like Frankie Crocker, like
Mm-hmm.
some of the biggest names in black radio, right? He said, you get more telephone calls in a half an hour. Some people has gotten 2-3 hours. I said, because people identify with
Mm-hmm.
problems that other people, that they thought they were the only ones who had it.
Yeah.
And when people started talking about it, they opened up, and it
Mm-hmm.
became it became a place of safe space for speaking.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to show your face. You could just talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just talk. And then you talked about the things that you do for others, how you inflicted harm on others. Remember Eichmann used to be the hitman for Adolf Hitler?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well,
Yes.
I woke up one day and said, man, that's me. I've killed
Mm.
off some people. I have killed off some people in my
Mm.
life.
Mm.
And I went and apologized to them. You
Mm.
know who they were? My brothers and my sister.
Mm.
Because I looked at it, I said, well, wait a minute, time out. Something's wrong here.
Mm.
How is it that there was 4 of us, and I'm the only one whose life seems to be moving in the right direction? Alcoholism, drug addiction, incarceration. I wasn't any of those things. I drank, I used drugs, but I never got caught up in those things.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What was it about me? We grew up in the same household, had the same mother and the same father. We experienced the same things. But what made me different than them? How could I make those decisions and they not? And then
Mm-hmm.
I began to think about it. I said, because you were a hitman. That's what it was. It's like, really? No, you were a smart kid. And because my sister was the baby, she got her attention. She was the baby. My oldest brother was the oldest brother. He didn't have to do anything. He got attention. He was the first, right? My brother that's right above me, well, he just did crazy stuff, so he got all this attention. So me, I'm left. I'm the next. I'm the one. I'm squeezed in the middle. So what did I do? I had to think about this a lot. What did I do to get my attention? Well, I used to be smart, and I mean smart to the point that I would have other people say, "Oh, you should be like your brother." I would do that because I could. And then they would get mad at me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But my parents would say, leave him alone, leave him alone. So that's how I got back at them. And I kept doing it years after, even after my parents died. I still was doing some of those things because that's what was in me.
Yeah.
I had to purge. And I called my eldest brother's passed away. It's been over 20 years.
Wow.
I reached out to every one of them and apologized to them. They're like, what? When you apologize to me, you ain't do nothing to me. I said, yes, I did. They didn't even know it. I
They
did.
didn't know. Mm-hmm.
When I took a real retrospective look on what I was doing, who I am, had nothing to do with them. It was me.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do this cleansing for me.
I hear
I
you.
had to do this looking at and saying, how did I victimize others? Because I'm doing that. So when I did that, interestingly enough, they accepted my apology and our relationship gelled. Like we are so close. My eldest brother's passed away, gone home to be with the Lord. But my brother and my sister, we are like this.
Mm.
If anything is going on in their life that not well or whatever, we know it.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
feel it. So we don't, what's up? And you all right? Yeah. We know it. But it's like it's just like this internal thing that's working through us. And I say that to say this: victim or victimizer or victorious.
Yes, yes.
You're gonna be one of those. The
Yep,
choice
yep.
is yours. You can be a victim, you can be a victimizer, or you can be
Hmm.
victorious over all of the above. And then
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
about it the way in which the Bible describes it, then all of those things work together for good to
Yes.
those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Because he
Amen.
does not desire that you would fail nor to be a victim, but he desires that you have life and that more abundantly. That's what he
Abundantly.
promises,
Yes.
that's what he said. So how do we access that is really what our struggle is day to day. How do we access it? How do we die daily? Because we don't just come to a place and we all of a sudden we there. That never happens. As long as we live and we fall and we fail and we trying to get back up and trying to start all over again because we do that, right? We know what we did and then we wind up doing it again. And then we got to go back and retool ourselves and then come back afresh and anew. Now I might be wrong in that, but that's the way I see it.
Self-honesty is what you're talking about. And so much in our culture teaches us not to be honest with ourselves, for fear that other people are going to judge us, for all of the whatever narratives that we have makes it very difficult for a lot of us to be honest with ourselves. But that's the path of
Mm,
the path of liberation.
mm, hmm. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Other people, I asked the question earlier, but sometimes the opinions of others direct all of our actions. And I think I'm glad that I finally realized one day that I don't care what you think about me.
Right.
Because they call you all kinds of different things. Some of
Mhm.
those things might be compliments, but they're not complimentary,
Right.
right? Because if I remember they called me professor in school, right? I was professor. Well, initially it just to tick me off, right? But then I said, well, why are they calling me that? Why are they calling me that? And then dad again, go back to dad. My brothers, particularly one right next to me, right? He used to tease me all the time. I mean, relentlessly. And we hung out with the same people. He was only a year older than me, right? So we used to hang out all the time. So we had the same friends. So when he started, they jumped in. So they just piled on, right? They just piled on. And I used to I
Yes.
mean, I was like livid. I wanted to beat him up. I told my father, I said, you need to beat him. You need to. He said, I'm not doing that. I'm not beating him. I said, why? I said, but he should, all these reasons. He says, well, let me ask you a question. Is what he's saying true? I said, no, it's not true. He said, so why does it bother you so much? I was like, what? Just, like, huh? He said, why, if it's not true, why do you let it bother you so much? I said, I don't let it, they just keep, he said, let me ask you this question. Is it funny? I said, some of it. He says, well, why don't you laugh? It's like, laugh, they're talking about me. He said, yeah, but if it's not true and if it's funny, why not laugh? He, you know how Arsenio Hall used to say things that make you go, hmm. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what? Now I'm really contemplating all this stuff. So the next day we were hanging out. We used to hang out on stoops. We had hung out on stoops stuff. We didn't have really, we had a couple of parks around the corner, but for the most part, hung out on a stoop. So we're on the stoop, and here they came. They started, and it took everything I had to laugh with them. I wanted to hit them with a rock, a bottle, or something. I just started laughing. I said, "That's funny." Oh, call me cold mind head. I said, "That's really funny." So I'm like, but I'm like really, really. I wanna ball and hit. I said, "Nope, I'm not gonna do that." This went on for about a week. After that, they said, you ain't no fun no more.
Right, right.
My dad had told me, he said, they're only doing
You're
it
gonna
to
stop.
give your reactions.
Get your
They get a
reaction.
reaction from you.
Uh-huh.
If you stop giving them that reaction, they'll stop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when they stop, right, I'm like, if I had known it was this easy, I'd have done this a long time ago. And so I realized, I said, it doesn't matter what people think about you or what they say about you.
Mm-hmm.
It matters how you think and how you see yourself.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in church. I was standing next to a friend of mine, and we were singing our hearts. I was singing, I'm just singing. He looked at me, he said, Russell, you can't sing a lick. I know, but I wasn't singing to you. I said, the Bible says, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. I'm making a joyful noise unto the Lord. You can sing. I don't sing, but I'm still making a joyful noise. And he looked at me, and Jerry has become one of my great friends.
Love it.
Because he saw that I'm not doing this trying to impress you.
Right.
I'm doing it because my relationship is with God. It's not with you. And if my relationship is good with him, my relationship with you is going to be fine. I don't know if people see that, right? That there is a dynamic in the cross, that there's the horizontal, my relationship with the Lord. And then there's a vertical, my relationship with humanity. But if this one, or vertical this way, right? Vertical this way. If my vertical is not correct, my horizontal is going to be messed up too.
Yeah.
You can't do this without that. Because if they had just strung Jesus on a horizontal bar, but didn't put the vertical in there, he probably wouldn't have died. But when they did the vertical, they put nails in the wrist and in the ankle areas so that he bled out.
Bleed out.
But had they not done that, people who were just nailed to the horizontal, they took a long, 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 long time to die.
Yes. Yes.
If they died at all, may have taken them off and beat them some more. But that, that's those are some of the things, and I like that you say, to look at being honest with who you are, being honest with yourself. And that's one of the things that I think we try to do on Matters of Faith on a regular basis, is make this scripture practical. How do you do that? You do that well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I admire you so much. That's why you can't take so much time before you come back and visit with us.
Well, back at you. And I want to give thanks to your father for the incredible wisdom that he poured into you.
Well, thank you. I love my dad. I do. They tell me I look just like him.
Oh, wow.
Yep. The people
when we're not in this space, you have to show me some pictures. So I want to give thanks to my parents today. They both passed some years. My dad about 35 years ago, and my mother 15 years ago. But today is their wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just so grateful for what they poured into me. And so this morning I sent my parents' wedding picture. I copied it. I mean, took a picture of it in my phone. And the anniversary party that was the last of my dad's life, which was 47 years. Because one of my brothers, listening to Spirit, said, I think we better not wait to their 50th. And because our parents had shaped in us how important it is to listen to the Spirit, we planned that party, and 5 months later, my dad passed.
Wow.
And so I sent those two pictures, the wedding and that 47.
I got chills with that one.
Yeah. And but it's so wonderful for me when I look at my parents' lives, and how they continue to teach me because of some things they didn't know how to do.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Totally. Totally.
Because emotionally, the kinds of things we're talking about now, emotionally, my dad especially did not know how to process what he was feeling emotionally, and the like. And so he was older than your parents, but he was only 63 when he died. And
Well,
because
you
he
don't know
helped.
that. My dad would have been like 95 now, 96.
Yeah, and my parents would be in the early 100s if
Over,
they were.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, because you said you're the
I'm
baby.
old.
You're the baby. You're the
Yeah,
baby in the family, right?
I'm the baby of the four.
Got you. Gotcha.
Yeah, and but and so I'm always grateful for how I continue to learn from them,
Mm, mm,
um, through the things they did and didn't do.
mm.
And the benefit for me in a lot of ways of being the youngest, I got to learn a lot from what my brothers did and didn't do,
Right,
and
right.
see some of the consequences that flowed from it. And in a lot of ways, I'm the one in my family who says, okay, come on, let's talk about this. And
Right.
so my brothers are starting to do more of that now. And it's beautiful to see
Mm.
that. They're all in their 70s, and which I'm gonna be there in 2 seconds, it seems. um,
Praise
but
the
in
Lord.
so many ways,
Hallelujah. God bless you.
but I was talking about liberation
Yeah.
that comes through self-honesty. I feel better at 68
Mm,
than I felt at 58
mm.
because I've let a lot of things go. I've been more and more honest with myself about what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and what you were saying earlier about directing our lives, how easy it is to direct our lives based on what other people want or what we think they want.
Right, right.
And I have just let so much of that go. I wish I knew how to do that in my 30s and
Right,
40s and
right,
stuff, but
right.
it was something I had to grow into. And that's all part of living victoriously.
Mm,
And something my mother used to say, and I got it and I didn't get it.
mm.
She said, we all come in the same way and we all leave the same way. And she was trying to teach me no one is more important than you are. And so I got that in a lot of ways, but I was still living by, so what are people going to think about me? Because I got
Mm,
that from my father. He
mm,
was very oriented to, what are people going to think about me? And,
mm.
over the years, it made a lot of sense to me that he was more oriented that way
Right.
because he had a father who was a rageaholic.
Mm.
And so my dad, and this is the victim stuff, right?
Right, 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 right.
He wants to make sure he does everything right according to his father's will and wishes
Mm.
to help himself feel safe. And he lived that way, not entirely, but in a lot of ways that showed up in his life. And
Hmm.
so, whatever the narratives are, how we were saying earlier, it shows up in our other relationships.
Right.
And that got passed in a lot of ways to my brothers and to me. And so I've been seeing all of us in our different ways begin to emerge from that. What are other people going to think? Because my dad used to say to my mom when she was upset and she was yelling about something, honey, we're the Christians. What are our neighbors going to think? Oh, Lauren, if I had $1,000 for every time I heard that, I would be a billionaire. I really would.
Wow. Wow.
And so it's letting go of some of those early teaching. And I say teachings, not that they were intentional teaching, but they were modeled for us.
Got you.
And there's a lot of, and I think especially for Black folks, when we think about victim, and I was saying earlier, psychologists talking about the Stockholm syndrome, that some of it is past. Sometimes the victimization is passed in our DNA.
Yep.
And how we respond to the circumstances in our lives, whatever our coping mechanisms, it's because of our forebears learned how to cope with certain things in particular ways. And that got imprinted in our emotional DNA. And so it's important, no judgment, but to help us understand. So why am I feeling this? Why am I responding in this way? Why do I keep veering off the path that I say I want for myself? And why do I keep judging myself? And that's one of the, that self-judgment is really the enemy to our emotional and to our spiritual world.
Yeah, yeah. Now that's a good segue, because we almost out of time. So let me show you what your mama was talking about. And then I'm going to
yes.
Yeah. Is that what your mama said?
That's what my mama said.
Right. That's right. So yeah, whichever way you want to cut it, that's what she said.
Right.
So let me just switch my share, and I'm gonna
love that.
You can close out. We're gonna go, by the way, for those of you watching, we're gonna go a little bit over tonight, but that's okay. But I want to give you an opportunity, Dr. Carey, to sort of share whatever you want in closing, and then I'm gonna share my final thoughts, and then we'll be done for the evening.
God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and power and sound mind. The more you inquire, why am I showing up in these particular ways, these particular patterns in my life? Just to learn, to understand, not to judge. The more we are able to do that, that's how we heal, that's how we grow, that's how we learn, and that's how we love. I believe that God wants each of us to be in personal relationship with God, as we started with that tonight. And in that personal relationship, for it to be held in love, always held in love, not trying to avoid punishment, but to be guided by love, always moving toward love and moving in love and moving through love. And I have to share this last piece. Many years ago, every morning I woke up for about a month when I was first awakened, and I would hear myself the words would come out of my mouth, "I'm so in love." I thought Spirit was telling me that this wonderful love of my life was coming, because I was single at the time. And it took about a week of that happening, "I'm so in love," for me to realize, no, God's not prophesying or forecasting the love of your life coming. God's telling you, like you were when you were 6 years old.
Exactly. He's reminding you of what you already know.
In love.
Exactly.
And I just want to say to each of you who are listening to this today, you're in love. You're in God's love. You're held in it, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've experienced, no matter the hurts, the traumas, no matter the joys, the sorrows, none of that. You are in God's love. And may you know that that perfect love casts out all fear.
All fears. All fears. Wonderfully said. Thank you so much. Now, I read a story recently about a retired man who was awakened from his afternoon nap by a noisy group of boys playing beneath his window. Instead of yelling at them, however, he did something very odd. He leaned out the window and told them he liked the sound of kids at play and would pay each one a quarter a day if they came and played every day. The boys were happy to oblige the obviously crazy old man. The next week, however, he told them that he could not afford to pay them a quarter. He could only pay them now a dime a day. Some boys left, but a few accepted the bargain. The following week, he apologized profusely that he had to cut their wages to a penny a day. This was too insulting. No way would they play for one measly penny. The remaining boys departed in a huff, never to return, leaving the old man without the joyous sound of children playing, but for some reason smiling to himself. Victimization is obviously a matter of it's kind of serious, it's a serious matter, but it can also be a state of mind. That old man could have been a victim of the children's antics, but instead, he chose to use his ingenuity to be victorious. He was not a victim. He was a victor. And everyone has had some form of evil into their lives at one time or another. Some are so painful that we just know it must be the devil at our heels. We don't see God in it at all, but it could, in fact, be his will. While they may be uncomfortable, hurtful, even excruciatingly painful, there are also opportunities for the Lord to be gracious to us.
Amen.
What I've come to understand is that the more evil, the more challenging, and the more hurt, the more heartbreaking the situation, the greater the blessing God has planned for you. Joseph is a prime example. Hated by his brothers and sold into slavery, languishing for years in a dirty prison cell before being released, and then advancing to the rank of governor of an entire nation, Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. Joseph discovered that he was not a victim. He was a conqueror, a victorious winner. He was called by God with a purpose, and God used everything in his life to make him victorious. When the vicissitudes of life envelop you, don't look at yourself as a victim. Whatever the situation or the circumstance, recognize that it is not some sort of divine punishment or spiritual retribution for something that you might have done. Whatever your circumstance may be, whatever evil has been allowed into your life, know that you are not a victim. You are and will be victorious. And don't you ever forget that. Amen. Evil is allowed into your life because the Lord puts a blessing in it. Somebody ought to say, I'm not a victim. Somebody ought to say, I'm not a victim. So thank you, Dr. Carrie Jackson, for sharing your time with us tonight. What a profound and enriching meal you served this evening. If I dare speak for this audience tonight, we're going to feed off of this night for a long time. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
I really do. And I want to remind you that you haven't graced us with your presence since March 7, 2022. That's definitely not good enough. That's not good. You have to plan to come back, and it can't be another 2 years. So you have to look at your calendar, pick out a couple of dates, and let me know when you're going to come back and grace us. Is that fair?
Awesome. Indeed. Indeed.
Good. Now, don't forget our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR company, J. Lauren R. Consulting. Those are my companies for all your church financial needs. Just call me, 718-328-8096, or email us at jlaurenr@jlr.llc. It's not about the castle. It's about the kingdom. If we take care of the kingdom will take care of the castle. In Matters of Faith, the book, I've been talking about it, but this is the book right here, hard copy. You can get it by sending $24.15 to my Cash App. That's $ Matters of Faith. Or you can get it as an ebook. The ebook you can get at www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. It's not on Amazon. Got to get on Smashwords. Smashwords.com/books/view/993177. Better Mag Magazine, www.abettermag.com. To subscribe, it's a 2-year subscription is only $27.50. They're carrying my column. That's why I want to make sure that you get it, because they are carrying my column which tells you that they're a little more progressive than some of the other magazines as far as I'm concerned. So make sure that you subscribe, like, and share that. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel, the Matters of Faith, the radio show YouTube channel. If you subscribe, like, and share, you'll be notified whenever we're on, so you won't miss Carrie Jackson. You won't miss anybody that we have on. You'll have all of this great stuff to talk about, and you'll have the opportunity to be blessed because of the wonderful guests that we have and the topics that the Lord gives to me. These are not my topics. I don't pick anything. The Lord gives me the topics, and that's what I write about. I don't try to come up with these things myself. Telephone, text, email, message, any way you do it, but tell a friend to join us regularly on Monday nights for Matters of Faith, the radio show. We are live on Matters of Faith, the YouTube channel. We also drop each episode on our Matters of Faith and J. Law and Russell Facebook groups, as we've done tonight. So please, ma'am, please, sir, subscribe, like, and share this Matters of Faith YouTube channel. And make sure that you don't miss a single episode of Matters of Faith because you didn't subscribe, like, and share the Matters of Faith YouTube channel. Now, the Lord bless you, the Lord keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Now, if no one told you this today, which you already heard it though, but I'm going to be the first to say it directly. I love you, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it, so get used to it. Join us next week on Matters of Faith, the radio show. And on behalf of my guest, Reverend Dr. Carrie Jackson, God bless you. Good night, and have a great evening. We'll talk to you next week. We'll see you then. Okay? All right. Now, you don't stop. I want you to stay with me for just a moment. And I just want to stop my broadcast. So give me a second. I got to find that. Sometimes it disappears on me wherever it goes. I don't know where it goes, but I'm going to stop my share for a moment, and that'll tell everybody that we are finished with the share product. And then what I will do is I will see if I can find my recording. We'll stop the recording. I'm doing all this for your benefit, audience, so you can see this. Recording is off. There's no more recording. Let's see. Stop it. I think I did that. Let me see. Let me try it again. Stop it. Got it? And then what we will do, we will stop the share. That's done. And now I think I can